Hampshire, just outside London, England, is Ash Alexander Cooper, an old army colleague of mine from many, many, many years ago. And we're going to talk today about his new book. Ash, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's great to see you after all these years. And I'm going to do your bio now, okay? And I have to read it off because there's actually a little bit too much. You're putting the rest of us to shame, pal. So here we go.
Cut it down then.
Yeah, Ash Alexander Cooper, OBE. What did you get your OBE for?
I had a great team that did good stuff and I was the boss.
Perfect. I guess the next stage is a knighthood, right?
I doubt that very, very much.
Sir Ash Alexander Cooper. It's got a nice ring to it. Anyway, is a former specialist military unit commander, combat helicopter pilot, wounded veteran, world champion athlete, award-winning international musician, leadership and resilience expert, and mental health charity founder and campaigner. One of the most operationally experienced officers of his generation, Ash spent almost 7 years leading some of the world's most elite forces in challenging, complex, and hostile environments such as the Balkans, the Middle East, and Central Asia. Following retirement from active duty, Ash turned his attention to business, focusing on addressing issues of leadership and leader development, resilience, team building, talent management, and more, after recognizing how many companies and leaders today experience very similar challenges to those he and his colleagues faced in combat. Yeah, you really are putting the rest of us to shame, pal.
Well, you obviously took that from my website, so that was a bit of a sales pitch rather than...
I did. Actually, I took it from the précis of your book that you sent me, so even better.
I was trying to win a publishing deal.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. Well, that's the whole point. We try to upsell it for you.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we were obviously in the military together, and obviously you had a slightly more stellar career than I did, but we were there roughly at the same time. We did a lot of the same tours. You did it obviously in different circumstances as me, but what brought you eventually to start writing a book about this stuff?
Well, first thing I should say, it's not a military memoir. No. I was very keen that it wasn't going to be anything about... I mean, there are military stories in there, but I didn't want this to be like the books that are already out there, that sort of tales of daring do. That's kind of not really how I'm wired, I guess. I didn't plan to write a book, honestly, but various friends of mine over the years have said, you really must write some of this mad stuff that you've done down, not just in the military, but the experiences before that, really starting in childhood, some of which were fairly traumatic. They basically bullied me into starting to write and said that this might be helpful to people if you can capture some of the essence of the trauma and the struggles and the resilience and the ways you got through some of those challenges. We think that it might help other people. So I sort of sat on it, slept on it for many years, and then was between jobs, and I was very fortunate to have some gardening leave, so I was still being paid between jobs, and it was during COVID, and I thought, well, if not now, then when? So I took the opportunity to take a few months to just capture some thoughts on paper, packaged it up, and quite a lengthy period thereafter looking for the right publisher and people that kind of bought into the fact that it wasn't a standard military memoir. I mean, the feedback we had from more of the traditional publishers was, we love that it's different, but the other stuff really does sell quite well because it's just sort of tried and tested. And I therefore kept looking for the people who wanted to take the book as it was, with the essence of what I wanted to get out of it to help people rather than it just being, stories of military stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everyone likes a good war story, but I like the way that you've done it, and you've co-written it with and the name has just dropped right out of my memory, but
Jeff Miller.
Yes, who's an expert, who's a psychologist, and she wrote the book with you, and for your stories, she's doing like almost a commentary and an analysis of what you're saying.
Yeah, so she's a very well respected around the world neuropsychologist, and I met her through another friend of mine who is an author, an ex-police officer who had a really glittering career in the police, but eventually was discharged, a medical discharge, when he was suffering very badly from PTSD from all of the cumulative nature of his experiences in the Met in London. And he's written some very successful books and really honest and open books, one called Blue, one called Crossing the Line. And Jess worked very much in the police sphere. So she's written a book called The Policing Mind and is an expert on resilience and trauma and neuropsychology. So when I was introduced to her, we were collaborating together on a charity endeavor that I was trying to get going. And when I finished writing the book, we discussed with my agent that whether there was a way to not make it more, not serious, but give it a bit more credibility in terms of the lessons that one can learn from the types of trauma that I describe. We thought it'd be a good idea to get somebody that is their job, that they help people through traumatic experiences at work or at home or whatever. And we thought if we could do some analysis on the kinds of trauma, not me as a sort of patient on the couch in a psychiatrist's office, but looking at the kinds of scenarios that I explain and go through, as honestly and authentically as I can, that she would then comment on that, as you say, and offer tips and tricks really for people if they're suffering from, childhood trauma or a bereavement or, all sorts of other things. We cover a bunch of ground in the book. So I'm thrilled to have Jess along on the journey with me on that. So, hopefully it'll help at least a few people.
Yeah. Well, it's coming out next year, right?
Yeah, we're just negotiating the date with the publisher at the moment, but it's very likely to be January 25, I think, where we are now, sort of a new year, new you kind of self-help thing.
So pretty much a year from now, just over a year from now.
So it's only in pre-order right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll put that out for people who are listening.
Publishing just works very slowly. I mean, I'm struggling to have the patience, if I'm honest, but I'm told this is how it works.
Well, it sounds about right. Wait, when you were writing, though, this is a question because I'm trying to write some stuff at the moment, which I've never really done apart from when I was forced to at school. But how often? What was would you like get up and write 6 hours a day? You seem like the kind of person, the disciplined man who can get up and do that. I find it once I start, it's okay, but just to sit down and avoid all the distractions that's going on in my life, to actually sit down and get some peace and quiet and write especially when it's not 9 o'clock at night when I'm just ready to go to bed.
Well, I didn't have any distractions, and that actually was the biggest challenge. And if I'm being brutally honest, I really didn't enjoy the experience. And I think mainly it's because I knew the topic or the topics that I wanted to cover. I just had to write them down. And the process of writing coherent, readable, interesting, entertaining, whatever type of prose, some days I got barely 100 words on the paper that I was happy with. And because I knew I only had a fixed period to actually write, that was a lot of pressure that I put on myself already, that if I didn't write, for example, I think I worked out I needed to do 1,250 words a day to be able to stay on track, to be able to get it done by the time I started my next job. And on those days where you could barely get 100 or 200 words out, that just added more and more pressure. So I didn't really enjoy the process. I didn't find it cathartic because I wasn't suffering, thankfully, and I'm very lucky in that respect. I wasn't suffering really from those experiences or reliving any of those experiences. I was reminded as I actually stopped and thought about some of the times in my life, other things came out that I didn't remember when I first thought about writing a chapter or a particular vignette. But the process itself, I should have been really disciplined, but I was also quite easily distracted. And then I would sort of, not superstitious, but I'd say, right, okay, well, I'm clearly distracted. So, right, if I go and get a coffee and I'll make the coffee, and I then had to lay my desk out and go, right, now I'm ready to write. And then when that still didn't flow, it's just, no, this is horrific.
Well, I'll tell you what I did, because like most things, the first step is the hardest thing to do, right? To actually sit down at your laptop and start writing. But what I did, I went for a long walk, and I had just the voice notes on my iPhone. And I walked for, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I just had like a stream of consciousness of the themes I'd thought about already, and I just spoke about them for a bit. And then I thought, when I get home, I'll transcribe it. And then I realized it was, it's going to be a hell of a lot of transcribing. It was going to take me forever. But then I found out, so this is a tip for you, and then I found out you can, with the new Word, Microsoft Word, and I'm sure there's other programs, you can actually download your voice notes to that, and it will transcribe it for you, and it will give you a Word document, and then you can go through and edit it and add to it. There you go. There's a little tip from the top.
Yeah. I mean, there was
from a guy who's never written a book.
There were some days where I did manage to get thousands of words out, and that was sort of, you felt good about it. And once you were in the role and sort of in the zone, it kind of worked. I think it's just habit, right? If you don't write for a living, it takes you a while to get into that groove of being able to do it and know sort of what's coming. When I found I had to do a master's degree when I was in the army, and it took me pretty much till the last essay of the year that course when I finally worked out how you're supposed to write essays again, having not written essays, since university the first time around. So, the muscle memory was weak on this. I do have a second book now that is sort of half written, half drafted, which is easier in some ways. But I would like to do future books, if I do any more, with someone else. I quite enjoy the collaborative bouncing ideas off people. I mean, although Jess wrote this or wrote her bits within this book, we did it separately. So it wasn't like we were sitting in a room bouncing ideas. So I did find it quite, I wouldn't say lonely, but it was isolating. I was easily distracted by squirrel.
I find that hard to believe. I'm actually very pleased you said that, because I'm the same. I've got the monkey mind. I've had quite a lot of people on here, actually, mindfulness experts, monks, one of our mutual friends, Chris Tappa, a bunch of other people talking about meditation and how important it is. Do you meditate?
I don't.
See, that's it. I can't do it.
I mean, I did. The closest I came once, someone bought me, because I tend to do far too many things because I'm an idiot, I guess. I just can't. I'm very bad at saying no. So I take on too much, and I'm always stretched very thin. And people tend to know, people who are close to me know that I'm always running around at a million miles an hour. And so a friend of mine very kindly once bought me a session. I think it was Reiki. It was something where I'm supposed to lie still and just not think and just whatever was happening around me. And the lady started doing this thing, and she goes, "You're doing lists, aren't you?" I said, "Sorry?" Because you're writing lists in your head. I could feel it. I said,
and were you?
Yeah. It's like, well, this is the first time I've actually laid still in the day when I'm awake and had time to actually think about all the things I need to do. She goes, "Please stop.
Yeah.
It's not helpful."
I tend to fall asleep when I go for massages. Well, I mean, what are you supposed to do, right? You're lying there. It's warm. You're having your back or your feet rubbed or whatever. You're going to fall asleep. It makes a lot of sense to me. But so, I mean, we can't argue the fact that you've accomplished a hell of a lot. You're the same age as me, and I kind of think sometimes I've done all right in my life, but you put me to shame. And I'm not blowing smoke up here.
Everything that you read out is pretty much, it's all former.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a former helicopter pilot, a former this, that, and the other. So I'm
not trying to blow smoke up your backside. I know
you can do that.
We're in the army. You can't do that. We're in the army together. We can't. It's never going to happen. But where did this drive come from? Where did this drive to get shit done, basically? Where did that come from?
Well, this is an interesting thing, actually, that did come out. One of the really, I think, quite useful things that came out during the process of writing the book. When I went back and started writing down some of the incidents or things that happened that were traumatic when I was a kid, from very, very young, from my first memory through to school, it was a pretty traumatic childhood. A manic depressive alcoholic parent, a lot of volatility and sort of uncertainty about what was going to be happening. And I used to just try and avoid going home, basically. The summary, I won't spoil everything that's in the book, but effectively would do anything to try not to go home during the holidays and find other friends to go and stay with, or just go other places and travel if I could afford to. So I would do paintings and sell, or go around the local town near school and offer to draw people's cats or dogs or houses, and then sell those pictures and drawings for 20 quid, 50 quid, whatever. Get enough money for a plane ticket and then fly somewhere or go somewhere, just so I didn't have to go home, because my return home would trigger a lot of the incidents that would then affect my mum and my sisters, right? But there was a moment at school where I'd scraped in on a music scholarship. So I scraped in academically, got a music scholarship, and just saw all the facilities at my school were amazing. So I just wanted to get involved in everything. And then in my last 2 years, as I was starting the A-level period, I suppose, I got called in by the headmaster, who let it be known that, try not to worry me, but said, just so you know, your dad is refusing to pay or won't pay the school fees. But don't panic. We have decided that you're contributing, therefore you can stay, which was amazing. So my final 2 years, I continued my education and got my A-levels. And I know the headmaster would have been absolutely devastated if he knew that I'd taken this message from that discussion. But subconsciously, and it only really came out, as I said, when I was writing the book, when I started unpicking the way I live my life, that subliminally or subconsciously I thought, well, that's great. I'm allowed to stay because I'm doing all these things. And he listed all the sort of sports and music and art and whatever. Therefore, it must mean that if I stop doing that and I do less, then I'm going to get kicked out because I'm no longer adding value. And therefore, I think potentially, I mean, I've not sat down and actually discussed that specifically with Jess yet, or anybody, but I wonder whether that sort of early experience of you can stay because you're contributing has sort of driven me to be the kind of person that is, as I said, very bad at saying no and just does more and more stuff, because I feel like I've just got to try and add value and make a difference anywhere and any way I can.
Sounds a lot like the army. If you're not contributing, you normally get kicked out. So,
well, you don't though, do you? I mean, you and I both will know people who can be pretty average, but will, you still need the average people who kick along, who aren't really.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing you said about your earliest childhood memory. I'm struggling to think. I think I know what it is, but I'm not entirely sure. How old do you reckon you were when it happened?
I reckon I was 3 and a bit. And it was 1976, which is obviously aging me now, alongside the grey in my little beard here. It was 1976, which those who were around then will remember. It was a really hot summer, a really excruciatingly hot summer that the UK just wasn't used to. And we had a Great Dane as our pet dog, and she died of sunstroke that day. And I remember she kept on disappearing, and we were trying to find her because she was going out. Apparently, the dogs do this when they know that they're on their sort of last legs, that they will go somewhere else to die. And so we kept having to go to try and find her, and she was in other neighbours' gardens and stuff. But it was also the day that my dad had taken an overdose. So there were ambulances and paramedics and people that we didn't know. And I don't remember all of that detail, but I just remember the dog issue and just lots of people busily around in our house that I didn't know who they were, rushing past and not talking to us. So that's my memory.
Blimey, what was the overdose?
Oh, I don't know what he'd taken, but just one of many.
Wow, jeez. So it wasn't, you didn't have a great relationship with your dad by the sounds of things. And
not the best.
No, I know, but if you ever listened to any boxer talking about this, or MMA fighter, or someone who's like, athletes and stuff, the ones who seem to be have the biggest or the most drive are the ones who've had the unhappiest childhoods, and I wonder if that's a thing. Well, it's clearly a thing, but does it have to be that way? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I've been trying to figure out this for a while, actually.
I mean, for me, I think the early acceptance, I guess, because it was acceptance of knowing that if you wanted to do anything, you just had to do it yourself, because we didn't go on holidays because he didn't like holidays. We didn't really do anything. Everything was on his terms. So if I wanted to do anything that I thought was interesting, like travel or whatever, I would find ways to do it, like painting pictures and selling them, and then buying train tickets and plane tickets. So I think that independence came partly from, in a good way, from just knowing that I had to get on with it. I mean, it was quite sad, I suppose, in some ways, that quite early on you realise that you couldn't rely on people in the same way that you should as a parent-child relationship. But I also, because I was a singer, and the choir I was in Winchester, it was a cathedral choir, you had to board. So whether you wanted to or not, if you were in the choir, you had to board, because it was basically a full-time job. You sang before breakfast, you had breakfast, you did a full school day, you sang after, and then all weekend and most of the holidays as well. So you had to be there, morning, noon and night. So from age 8, I guess, I was also quite independent, or, because you had to be. And quite grown up as well. When I go back, and if I ever go back to the cathedral now, I'm hoping to go in a few weeks to the carol service that I used to sing at. I mean, looking at the kids now, they are so tiny. But, when I think to my own daughter, who, when she was 8, I mean, she was pretty well behaved, but a lot of 8-year-olds are quite, you can't really tell them to sit still and quietly and behave. But we had to, we were in front of thousands of people in some cases, or live on TV. I mean, there was one incident where I said what I really thought, which probably I shouldn't have said. But generally, we just were made to be quite adult quite early on, and were given the respect and the trust to be mature and grown up as quite young kids.
So you went to boarding school at 8 years old?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It seems quite common in England, I guess in Scotland as well. But how was it? I mean, okay, for you it might have been a little bit different, but my son's 8, and the thought of sending him away, I tell you, it would be heartbreaking for me. But I'm sure he would thrive. I'm sure he'd be okay. But he's very much part of the family, of course. And I honestly think that I personally would be devastated. I'm sure my wife would too,
But I think for me, because in my particular circumstances, because the family life was volatile and quite upsetting quite a lot of the time, actually the school and the friends / the family of your friends at school was the thing I think that saved me in those years where I could have taken many different paths and diverged into a much less constructive or positive journey. So I'm quite glad that I had that experience, and we got to do some amazing things. I mean, we sang all over the world. We got flown to New York to sing a world premiere of something that Andrew Lloyd Webber had done. We recorded an album that went triple platinum in the EMI Abbey Road studios and the Beatles studio. I mean, I loved the Beatles back in the day, and all those experiences as a young kid were just amazing. And I wish now I had as little. Not fear, but I suppose it is a bit of fear or stage fright or just self-awareness to think, oh my God, I'm about to sing to X thousands of people or millions of people internationally. You just kind of got up there and you did your thing. You went back for, your dinner.
And how old were you when you did that?
That was 8 to 13.
No, but when you were on TV and you went and flown to the States?
The US, that particular trip was, I think I was 12.
Bloody hell. That's very impressive. Jeez, for Andrew Lloyd Webber, and you were in the Abbey Road studio.
Yeah, we made his album there.
That's amazing.
Studio. But the world premiere, I mean, we sang in a church in Manhattan. I mean, we were in a choir, so it wasn't me on my own. It was there were 20 or so of us, but it was a pretty good experience. Good fun.
So for you, do you have maybe a personal philosophy then? Because you were in the Gurkhas, the British Army, with the Gurkhas. And by the way, do you speak Gurkhali as well? Do you speak their local tongue?
No, but I can still get discounts on curries, but that's not.
And then you went to the Air Corps, and you were a combat helicopter pilot, flying. What were you flying?
I was a Lynx driver.
A Lynx, GTI of the sky, and then you went on to specialist unit. After that, and it took you all over the place. But to go from one branch of the military of the army to another branch, and then subsequently another branch, that takes some doing, and you haven't got that much time. The window for doing this kind of thing is pretty short. It can't be more than seven to 8 years, really. How did you manage to get that in, and what was it that drove you to go from being an infantry guy to an Air Corps guy, and then on to what you did afterwards?
I just love learning new things and pushing myself to try stuff, whether I'm successful or not at it. I just like to try, so my philosophy, not really philosophy, but the way I think about both my military and my post-military life in the commercial and business world is that I just like doing or love doing interesting things with interesting people in interesting places. And as long as I have the ingredients of those three things, then I'm happy. And so for me, when I went between different bits of the army, or when I left the army and went into civilian work, that never changed. I didn't feel like I'd had to transition from the military to civilian life. It was it's just been the same thing, continuation, with or without a uniform. It doesn't really matter. But in terms of going from Gurkhas to pilot to a bunch of other different joint and interesting roles, was just wanting to learn and just seize every opportunity. I felt, particularly as when I joined, I genuinely thought I'd only do 3 years and then I was going to get a proper job,
a proper
job. And I got to the end of the 3 years and went, wow, that was fun. I've learned Nepali, I'm a parachutist, I'm a jungle warfare instructor, I've been to Bosnia, I've done all these cool things. And the jobs that were then available at that time for me in that unit were less exciting. And then some friends of mine were going flying, and I'd never considered flying, honestly. And I thought, yeah, that sounds fun. I'll try that. So I went and did that, and flew a lot of counter-terrorist stuff, which was really, pretty good fun. But I wasn't passionate about it, but I really did enjoy it. And I learned a ton, about teamwork and under pressure. When you're flying, the Lynx where we were flying was a pretty hectic time. You were map reading, you had all the engine and aviation systems to monitor. We had 4 radios and an intercom, so we generally have 2 radios in one ear, 2 radios in the other ear, plus the intercom, and you just have to have the volume. Like, I knew that the loudest radio in my left ear was the VHF, and then the UHF was the quieter one, and you're juggling all this stuff. So it teaches you a lot about how to cope under pressure. And then, of course, if there's something happening outside, you're trying to avoid wires, you're trying to land in the right place, you're trying to avoid, enemy shooting at you and stuff. It's a good test, and it allows you to build up resilience in trusting yourself to be able to cope with quite a lot of fast-moving pressure.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is to make the jump to the Air Corps, because becoming the pilot, it's a lot of book work, isn't there? There's a lot of, you have to learn, well, it's a completely new discipline compared to the infantry. And it takes, how long does it take for you to get your wings? It's a year and a half or something, isn't it?
So I started in June 99 and badged in October 2000. So yeah, over a year, nearly a year and a half.
I mean, it just seems to me that you managed to tap into something that it's quite a lot talked about this on this show, is kind of the human potential aspect, in that, we try to get people on who've got, just regular guys and girls who come on and talk about what they've done and, how they've achieved it. So people who've gone from being, overweight and then running the marathon and then climbing Everest and that kind, that sort of thing. And it's just a switch is tripped in their mind, but somehow they figure out how to delve into this well of, I don't know, untapped power that we have that I can't really put my finger on what exactly it is, but there's definitely something there. And that once you've accessed it once, it's there and you can access it again. But I know whether we have this innate thing is that if we have done something, quite, like let's say running a marathon, and you think, okay, I can do that. And then I've proved that to myself. I don't need to do that again. But then some people, myself included, are then maybe reluctant to dip back into that well of potential. And I just wonder if you had any thoughts on that, because it seems to me that whether you've consciously done it, but you certainly seem to have done that.
Well, I mean, any success I've had almost exclusively has been as part of a team. So I just love being parts of teams, and I feed off, the strengths and the weaknesses of the team. And I'm, I guess, as I get older, increasingly aware of the things I don't bring, either as a leader or as a team member. So I just thrive on being part of high-performing teams that are trying to just be the best they can be. And that doesn't matter whatever the discipline is. So whether it's flying or whether it's, doing rugby or duathlon or in a business team, it really doesn't matter. That's what I love being part of, is the sort of that high-performing excellence sort of mindset that we can always get better. And this goes back to learning at the end of the day. But in terms of moving between those disciplines, I genuinely don't feel like I've ever been brilliant at any one thing, and I accept that, because I can't focus. Maybe I've got ADHD, I don't know. I can't focus on one thing and just do that to the nth degree brilliantly or as best as I can. I don't want to get too deep in any one thing, because there's so many other things I really want to do or would love to try as well. So I've sort of had to accept that, quite often I've done okay, fairly well, but never going to be an Olympian or Olympic champion or anything like that in anything. But, I'm okay with that. I'd rather have the breadth and the depth of experience, good and bad, or, failure, success, across a bunch of things. Although, interestingly, that said, there have been a few occasions and over time in the military when I found myself in, quite unpleasant or quite complex situations of big attacks. Let's say when I was working in Central Asia, in Afghanistan, I was working in Kabul quite a lot, and there were a lot of big attacks that I was helping, the Afghans to command their way through, let's say, to try and resolve them. And when those were really quite hectic with explosions and bullets flying and, people getting wounded, there were times where, just for me, time did slow down. It sounds very cliched, but because of the cumulative experience and capacity and, well, just experience and resilience that I built up, I guess, from the first time when I was shot, which everything happened really fast and I was, it was very out of control for me. But not many years later, in those other situations, I just felt, of all the times in my life, this is what I'm the right person at the right time, or the right person at the wrong time. But it worked. That when people were looking to me going, what do we do now? I felt like I was the right person to actually say, right, everyone stay calm. This is what we're going to do. We will get through this. But generally, I feel like there's always people who are far better than, far more intelligent, far more capable. But I will still love being part of those teams and working with them.
Yeah, well, they call it the chaos box, don't they? When time slows down. That's what we used to call it in armored infantry, because everything was very, very hectic. And what seems like 10 minutes is actually 3-4 hours. It's one of those crazy circumstances. But it also seems to me that you're one of those people, and I kind of think of myself like that as well. Is where I actively seek people who inspire me, who I think, wow, this is a good person to actually be hanging out with, because it's going to rub off on me, and it does. And it sounds to me that you've done the exact same thing. But you kind of glossed over the fact there you got shot. Where did you get shot?
My legs.
On your legs?
Both legs, yeah.
At the same time?
Yeah.
By what?
By an AK-47.
What was it? Did it go through one leg and hit the other?
No. So I'm super lucky. It was my first of a number of Halloween incidents. So I was shot on Halloween. I was then blown up on Halloween a few years later, and then roof collapsed on my apartment on the third year when it was supposed to be a nice, calm London non-operational job. And then I walked into a light fitting this year on Halloween and cut my head open. So Halloween, I'm really stay away on if you want trick or treat buddies. No, that first one was, we were just ambushed. We'd done our main mission, and we were just moving down the rest of the street to clear houses and just check there was nothing bad there. And there was. And so we managed to open the gate of this particular compound, and all hell broke loose. And we were just showered with thousands of rounds of, well, it felt like thousands of rounds, orange stinging bees, as I describe them, sort of bees and bullets. So I was hit with, luckily, very, very fortunate, 2 bullets, but they were ricochets. So they'd lost a lot of their velocity. So when they hit me, they just got stuck, having gone a fair way into both my legs, but they didn't go out the other side, which is when the most damage is generally done. And then another bullet grazed my bum on the way past, because as I went to turn to try and get away from the firing, it burnt me, because it was phosphorus, the tracer rounds, and that hurt more than anything. Although I had 2 proper holes in my legs, the burn, the surface burn of a couple of layers of skin was more painful than anything else. So I stupidly said to one of my friends in the team, "Can you check my arse? Because I think I've been shot in the arse." So that made it into and that's now the story, that I was shot in the arse running away. But they also fired a couple of RPGs, so rocket propelled grenades, which exploded behind us. So we all got peppered with shrapnel as well, which is a bit tedious. And then the next day, it wasn't until the next day when I checked my backpack, and I had another couple of bullets went through my backpack just behind my head. So I was particularly fortunate. 3 other colleagues of mine were also wounded, and sadly one was killed, who was standing just behind me. So, literally on my shoulder. So the difference between life and death and good luck and bad luck was, very, very small margin.
Yeah, that takes some resilience, and that's another theme in your book. What does that mean to you?
For me, resilience is all about 2 things fundamentally: being able to adapt and then learn. But you have to do it in adversity. So the ability to adapt and learn in the face of adversity. I think it's very hard. I'm not an academic, so I may be challenged and happy to be challenged on it. But for me, unless you're going through something hard, I don't believe you can genuinely build resilience if you've never faced something difficult, because it's the process of getting through something hard that allows you to know that you can get through other hard things or more hard things. The adaptability bit, though, really is a nod to the fact that we all live in such a complex world now, and complexity by its very nature is unpredictable. So if you aren't able to adapt to a changing situation and accept that in a complex environment you will never have all the answers, at least 50% of what's in front of you is probably very black, grey or opaque, and you can't see the way through. But the challenge for most of us, because we're human, is that when we see something scary or uncertain like that, we tend to default to seeing the risk, or overwhelmingly see the risk and the threat of not knowing all the answers. I think what I and many colleagues of mine, both in business and in the military and in sport, actually, the ones who have been more successful, the most successful, are those that kind of accept that is how life is, and they are able to change their mindset to accept that you don't have all the answers. Therefore, that black, grey, opaque space, rather than being 50% scary, is actually 50% opportunity. It's freedom. And if you can get in your mind that no plan you have, we always used to say, everybody in the army will be able to regurgitate the "no plan survives contact with the enemy" line. But it's absolutely true. I remember when I gave orders, for missions. It was about 20% of the time spent on delivering the orders, and the other 80% was, right, when that plan doesn't work, these are the things we need to think about so that we can do them instinctively when we have to do them. It may not be how I've said, but we'll need to adapt. So you have to be adaptable. If you're fixed, if you've got a fixed mindset, I wouldn't say you're screwed, but it's going to be a lot harder. And if you never have to face something hard, then that's going to be really tough when you do face something that is really out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, well, you obviously grew up playing sports, team sports. And me too. I love playing football, and I played rugby as well, amongst other stuff. But it's one of those things when you're playing a sport and you're in a team and you think you've got a good team, and then you get hammered by another team, and then suddenly you have to reflect and say, well, I need to up my game here, because this guy had me in his back pocket the whole game, and I wasn't used to that sort of stuff. I mean, you know what I mean. Then suddenly you find that the more you play, the more you practice, the more you work on your fitness, the better you get. And then you find out you've got another gear. And then I like to use the example of going to the officer school in the UK called Sandhurst, which brings that out of you even more, because you turn up thinking you're in good shape. And then there's probably people like you who are absolute snakes, can run this like absolute whippets. In fact, there's a guy in my one of my courses who used to represent the UK at 800 meters and 1500 meters, and you've never seen anyone run that fast in my life. I certainly hadn't seen anything like it. So then you realize you get more gears, and then more gears, and then suddenly you get this kind of confidence about yourself, don't you, that you can actually, I can deal with this. I just need to work at it a bit harder. And it sounds to me like that's what you're up to.
Well, it's funny you say that. My platoon at Sandhurst was ridiculously fit. I mean, there were people who were far fitter than me, and I thought I was quite fit. The BFT, the basic, what's it called, the basic fitness test, the 1.5 mile run that you have to do. There was a standard military test. I can't remember what the cutoff was, maybe 10.5 minutes. If you were under 8 minutes, that was kind of a decent time, right? We had, I think, 10 people in the platoon run to 7.5 minutes.
Yeah,
it was something crazy, and I was in the top 10, but there were people who were considerably faster than me, and that was a kind of like, wow, I'm now in the big league. That's
4.5 minute mile territory, pretty much.
And one guy, the rugby player, who was he 15 stone? I mean, he was just I don't know how, but he flew like a. I mean, he was Anyway, so I think you're right that you can realise that you can step up, but I think also the risk is that when you do find yourself in a much bigger pond, and you realise that you're a smaller fish, that can be. There's a moment there where you can either freak and sort of, well, not freak, but really like I did, and do question everything. I think, God, I'm really out of my depth here. I mean, when I got asked to go and do England rugby trials as a schoolboy, I mean, I was always the smallest person in my team, always. So I was always trying to put on weight, and I felt like I just needed to be heavier, I needed to be stronger, I needed to be bigger, and my genes didn't allow me to grow as tall as I wanted to be. So I was always felt like I was up against it, and then going, finding myself at high level trials for national teams and stuff, I would quite often almost psych myself out to the point of not being able to do it, and then just try and find excuses to not be able. I've hurt myself. I've just pulled a hamstring walking off the coach, and I'm like, no, you haven't. So I'm glad that there were times where there was close to me allowing my brain allowing me to, or almost trying to give me an excuse, a way out of not doing it, and then I was always forced to do it, and I'm glad that I did, because that even if I didn't get selected, I still learned something incredibly powerful and valuable.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to one of my points I was going to bring up about self-doubt, and you're bringing it up, but what's your method for dealing with self-doubt?
Well, firstly, just being aware of the signs when you're starting to doubt yourself. And I write a chapter in the book about self-doubt and the perception of failure. I've done, for example, I had 3 speeches this week, different keynote speeches at 3 different events. Last week, and one of the 3 I thought went really well, and the other 2 I'm still just going over in my mind, going, oh God, it was awful. Now, the people have been sent really nice feedback and stuff, but I set myself quite sort of high standards and high expectations to do the very best. And if I don't feel I have, that bothers me for probably longer than it should. But I do doubt myself often because when I turn up in anything really in a job or in a team, I'm just looking around going, bloody hell, that guy or that girl is just awesome. They speak brilliantly. They're stronger. I always look around and rank myself quite low down the field. But then I quite like proving people wrong. So once I've gone through that process, which can be quite, self-destructive and pointless actually, I kind of need to go through it to then go, right, I kind of get to the bottom of that and go, right, and what are you going to do about it? Okay, well, I'm going to go out there and prove everybody wrong that I might be the smallest and not the cleverest or the fastest, but I'm still going to, see if I can surprise people and maybe myself along the way.
And what about fear?
I think fear is healthy. I kind of embrace fear in a way, not, standing on the edge of a cliff and, I don't know. I mean, fear. Yeah, I think fear can be very healthy if you can control it. But being open to it and sort of accepting that that's a natural feeling to have, particularly again when you're stressed or facing something that is challenging that could go wrong. If I'm always nervous if I don't have any fear, but I generally do. There's always something that I'm very conscious of physically that will be happening that just reminds me that, I'm sort of not taking anything for granted.
Okay, so in your book, you're going to run through all these things, and it's all these kind of themes. It's basically very, 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 they're human subjects, aren't they? These are things that affect everyone. And, one of the things that we talk a lot about in this podcast as well, because we get a lot of military guys come on, and we talk about PTSD, and, we talk about fear, and it seems to me, and I have no idea why it is, but it looks like to me that there's some people get it and they get it bad, and it can have, down the line can have, end in tragic consequences. But other people can seem to just skate through it. How about yourself? How did you get on with it?
Well, I think just even your last comment there about people skating through it, I think you have to be careful to not to assume that that's actually what's happening. I know, having had conversations with people, that there have been situations where people have assumed that I was completely in control and knew exactly what was going on. And me personally was thinking, I have no idea quite how this is going to play out and I'm terrified. So I think we just, we never quite know how people are getting through stuff, and what they're presenting may be quite different to the reality. In terms of the PTSD, I mean, I've done a lot of work since I retired from active duty, as it were, or full-time service. I ended up doing 7 years reserve service as well, but generally my regular service finished in 2016. I've thrown myself into a number of veteran-specific mental health charities to see if I can help others, because I'm really conscious that I'm quite lucky that although I've gone through arguably more than many will have gone through, thankfully, have not had to go through quite as many of the traumatic things that I've done. But I've managed to find a way, consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously, to just be able to cope with everything so far. And the trouble is with, I mean, if there's any fear, I suppose it's that I'm absolutely fine now, but trauma is cumulative,
yeah.
Right? So for me, as upsetting as it was to see people killed and blown up in front of me and picking up body parts and all that sort of stuff, and apologies if anyone's having their dinner and when they listen to this, but those things I was able to cope with, particularly I think when I was the commander of those missions, when I was really focused on, I need to get as much of this guy, particularly in places like Afghanistan, where it's really important that they bury their loved one within 24 hours, that I needed to find as much as I could so they had something to bury, so they could grieve and go through their process. So I was singularly focused on that as my mission rather than worrying about all the other stuff. For me, the most traumatic thing genuinely that I've had to deal with, where I know that I had physical sort of reactions to it more than any of that military and even childhood stuff, was fighting for access to my daughter, who lives in Australia. A process that is a very legal process to try and go through the courts and stuff to ensure that you can be the parent that you want to be. Particularly given my own upbringing, I was adamant that I wanted to have a very different experience for her or any children that I was lucky enough to have from the one that I had with my siblings. And so for that to be sort of seemingly getting out of control and nothing I could really do to prevent what ended up happening. That was, extremely traumatic, and it continues to, the wounds are quite deep. I've missed out on so many, or she's missed out, more importantly, on so many just normal things that you do. I can still count the time together in days and hours, days and weeks, rather than months and years, which is sad, but it is our experience, and we make the most of it. But long story very long, that's the kind of the most traumatic thing for me, and that triggered me much more than anything that I experienced in the military. But everyone's different. That's the crap thing about this. Brains are just such weird things that you never know what your trauma or trigger is going to be.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Have you ever had therapy? Have you ever thought about have you been checked out by a shrink?
I have, but not for... yes, but not because I was...
I know what you're going to say.
It was for the court process to prove that I wasn't...
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Right. Oh, no, I thought you were going to say it's because of what you were doing in different places. They had to do some sort of assessment on you.
The situation was, there were suggestions that I must be a psychotic killer because I'd been in the army, and I had to go and prove that I wasn't. And they said on paper, I've got a certificate that says I'm not mad. So that's
perfect.
Good. Yeah.
You brandish it around. But what about? I'm often. I was back at a funeral. Actually, it was one of my old corporals who he had PTSD bad, and he sadly died. It wasn't. I don't think it was suicide or anything like that. I think it was natural causes, but he died young, and it was very traumatic for his friends and his family, of course, because he was only in his early 40s. Not an old guy by any stretch. And I was chatting to a few of the guys, my old soldiers, who at the funeral, and they were saying about how a few of them struggled with it. And it was mainly because they'd seen people being killed, and it was this, why him and not me? He was a better guy than me type of thing. And that was the thing that preyed on their minds. And I found that, I've heard it before, but hearing it from someone firsthand, it was quite an emotional thing to hear, because you don't, we obviously you get a great bond when you're in the military with these guys and your colleagues, but seeing them being killed must be horrendous, and I can only imagine what you went through over there, but nothing comes through. It's quite remarkable how some people can do that. I know a few people like you as well.
I said that the first time when I was shot, it was so chaotic, and a friend of mine who is a colleague who's in the next door building, he said we didn't talk about it, and we had a chat about maybe 15 years after, or maybe, about 15 years perhaps after the incident. We just had the 20-year anniversary actually, and he said he poked his head up above the wall because he obviously heard all hell breaking loose, and just he described it looking like a washing machine. There was just stuff going around on a spin cycle, just bullets and stuff everywhere, and he just thought, they're dead. They've got to be dead. There's no way anybody could get out of that. And 4 of us did, out of the 5, incredibly. So I think whether I'm more or less susceptible to survivor guilt, I don't know. But from that moment, I realised quite how much, if I'd been 1 inch taller, I'd have been desperate to have been 1 inch taller all the way through school and in my sports teams. But if I'd been 1 inch taller, I'd have lost my knee. I'd been amputee now, because the bullet would have gone through my knee joint rather than just above my knee, because I'm a short ass. And so there's so much luck involved that I was able, and my colleagues as well, I think similarly, as tragic and traumatic as it was. I really struggled at the funeral, because I'd not actually seen when this guy went down, and he just disappeared. And I think he must have fallen into a ditch when he fell. So when we looked around to extract, couldn't see him, and assumed he must have therefore gone on his own when the firing started. So I didn't see him again from the moment I was shot until I was back in the UK, having had my surgery, and went to the funeral, and then was standing in front of his coffin. And that I found that very hard. But the rest of us, I think, just realised that there is so much just luck and bad luck, and it could have been any one of us. The bullet in my right thigh missed my femur and my femoral artery. We were talking before, one of your friends, that bullet went in and ripped through, broke his femur and stuff. I could not have been more lucky. honestly, and the ricochets as well helped. I did pick up E. coli and Enterobacter, I think it's called, two quite nasty bacterial infections from it. But that was antibiotics sorted that out.
Because I remember my old company commander in my regiment. He was just brand new platoon commander at our regiment, and they were during the time of Lockerbie when I think it was Christmas Eve. So they got called out from Christmas leave, and they had to go out and they had to go around the small town of Lockerbie in the borders of Scotland and England. Basically, they all had bin bags, and they were going around collecting body parts. I mean, you can imagine that. And he was telling me about it, and he said he sometimes gets flashbacks, and but he said, I said, well, how does it affect you? He goes, it gives you it's very poignant, and you remember it, and then it's gone. And I just, see some horrible things.
Each of the incidents I could remember in sort of HD 4K video in my mind as if they were yesterday, but not I don't view them in a negative way now. It's not something that I try and avoid thinking about, but if I recall that time, it's there. But what I take from it is that the things that came from the losses we had, it just makes me even more driven to just try and make a difference, because I owe it to those people who we didn't bring back. I've lost probably more than 70 friends or colleagues killed, and many more, wounded from, and I spent a lot of time with Americans and other nationalities. And that's really, really tragic and, horrific. But I think had we or I not gone through some of those experiences, then I wouldn't be as resilient as I am now. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should go through that kind of level, but you have to go through something hard to realize that you have the strength to get through hard things. And I think COVID was actually very helpful. Obviously COVID was crap for everyone, but it was probably quite helpful for some people who might have never really been challenged or under pressure, to realize that actually they do have an inner steel or an ability just to get shit done and get through it. For me, COVID was slightly different, that I quite enjoyed it in a way. I mean, I was thankfully not sick, and the being separated from my daughter was horrendous, but I did manage to get out to Australia a few times, to be locked in hotel rooms by the police for a couple of weeks at a time, to then get 10 days or so with her afterwards, but it was worth it. But for me, being forced to slow down was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. And I'm much more conscious now of when I am stretched too thin and traveling too much. I can see my heart rate go up on my smartwatch and all that sort of stuff. I'm much more aware of. I try and sleep better, and I think that's the first thing that all of us can do. If you're feeling slightly overwhelmed with stuff, just get proper sleep if you can. Go to bed at a sensible time, and try and I know some people struggle to sleep. Thankfully, that's not something I have ever had a problem with. But I now try and look after myself a bit more than I used to. But I still struggle saying no.
I've actually got a sleep expert coming on, not tomorrow, the day after. So if you have any questions, text them to me later on, and I'll get back to you. Yeah, this guy sounds pretty impressive, actually. So I guess what I'm trying to get at, we basically, I think I understand what you're talking about when you're talking about with the themes of your book, and about how it's, yours is a pretty extraordinary story, and again, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm just telling you the facts. There's not many people who can come around and say what you've done, and you obviously know a lot of people who have, but for the general public, it's pretty darn impressive. And then it's kicked you on, and you've kicked on and done all these amazing things, and your business life subsequently has been also a great success. What do you think for you? What is your aim? What are you trying to achieve? Are you going to try and? Actually, you answer it. What are you trying to achieve in life? What's your aim before you die?
I'm driven towards service. I think the service started literally from age 8, sitting and singing every week, day in, day out for other people. That sort of service DNA of doing stuff that's not about you. It's to do things for other people. That's sort of how I'm wired from that very early age. Therefore, not a massive surprise going into the army or the military. And although I now work in the commercial sector. Everything that I do there is to try and help other people who have hard problems solve those hard problems and be successful. What I really love doing is just helping people. So when I do my speeches and hopefully through the book, if the feedback is, that's really helped me, or if nothing else, I did have a speech once where somebody came up to me afterwards, and I probably should have asked them if I could have used it on my website, and said, that was really inspirational. Basically, thank you, because I thought my life was shit, and now I've realised it's put everything in perspective. And if you've been able to get through all of your stuff, then I know I can get through mine. And I thought, well, I'll take it. So I'd love to, not legacy per se, but if I can really make a difference for those struggling with mental health, not just with veterans, but anybody who serves. I really think we need to broaden the conversation about mental health and service. And while, as a military veteran like you, I absolutely want to support that community, and I do. And all the profits that I get from this book are going to the Royal British Legion Industries, RBLI, and the Gurkha Welfare Trust, because of the great work that both those amazing charities do. Because I don't want this is not about me. Yes, it's some of my stories, but I want to make a difference for other people. And if I can help either through donations or just going out and meeting people and inspiring people, and if I maybe write more books or do more stuff that is with people who are struggling and we can share and talk through it, then I'll be happy. I still need a real job first, but I'm hoping that over time, if I can have any degree of success, then that will allow me to scale back on running around 18 hours a day, doing my day job, and actually give me more time to do the stuff that I really do. I love my day job, but I also want to do more stuff with those that need the support, because I feel that while I've come through all of my experiences fairly well, I might need help myself in the future. Who knows? But while I can help others, I want to.
I was going to ask you that. If you say this book and your subsequent 10 books that you bring out, and you become an internationally famous, best-selling, and make tons and tons of cash, what would you do?
I'm not very good at keeping cash. I want to have the security to know that I will always be able to afford to go and see my daughter and do stuff, because that's quite expensive, flying back and forth to Australia constantly. But I would like to give it away. Actually,
good answer.
If I won a massive lottery win, I've already sort of in my head planned out all the people that I know for whom this would make a massive life-changing difference, that I would get far more joy from seeing the difference I could make to others than just getting a bigger house or a newer car.
And I agree. I tend to agree with that. And it's because, you wonder when you see, like, I don't know these people, but you see them on TV, like the Bill Gates and the George Soros and that, and they get a bad press. I've never met the guys, but, they're not very well liked. And I'd like to think if I was worth $100 odd million, that I wouldn't have, that money wouldn't be mine. I would be given that. I'd be doing all sorts of different stuff.
It's slightly unfair with Bill Gates, doesn't he? He has that amazing foundation that's trying to, cure various global diseases.
Yeah, but it's a big tax break as well, and he makes a lot of money out of it.
Okay, fair enough.
Here's one for you. I'm sorry. Do you know? You don't know him or anything, do you? No. Okay, I was just checking. No, but a friend of mine whose his dad is very well off was telling me about these foundations, and it's very, very tax efficient, because you pay, I think, about 5% tax or whatever it is, and then let's not go down that rabbit hole. But
expert for that.
But then again, in their defense, I will say this. I don't want to go there, but I would say this: if you were handing over billions a year, probably more than billions a year, tens of billions a year in tax revenues to a government, knowing full well how corrupt and inefficient the governments are, I'd probably want to keep it myself as well if you want to do good work. I can't say I'm blaming them. I'm just curious as to what, there's a lot you could do with that kind of money. You could give everyone in the world about $20 or $40, and some people
when the lottery started in the mid-90s, I was with the Gurkhas, and we were chatting one night with my platoon about what they would do if any of them won. And my platoon sergeant, who is an amazing Gurkha, he said, well, I've thought about this. And what I'd do is I would rent a bunch of military trucks, or see if I could borrow some military trucks, and I'd fill them with pigs and goats. Okay. And then I'd drive these trucks, 10 trucks onto the base, and then I'd open the back and just let all the pigs and goats out. and then whoever caught one could have it, to make a nice curry. And for him, that was the nicest thing he thought, that would be really, really appreciated by the rest of the guys to have, fresh curry, pork or goat curry. And I thought it was quite sort of innocent and sweet. But he knew that would, for his team and his people, that would be brilliant.
No private jets, no helicopters, no Rolls Royce.
Goats and pigs.
Oh, that for me makes a lot of sense too. If you're trying to help your fellow man, I'm all for it. I think I just find it just seems that there's a lot of unhappy people, especially, I live in a place, well, not exactly, but just next to a place, which has got a lot, very, very, very wealthy people. It's a place where, you've been there many times, and some of them just look miserable.
The wealthy bit though, just as good.
Yeah. I'm in the bad neighborhood in the village next door. Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? You meet a lot of people and they just seem miserable, and they've got all the money in they could ever want. And you just think, why are you so miserable? It makes no sense to me. If it's making you miserable, just get rid of it. Keep $1 million or $2 million and give the rest away.
The idea that you make all your money and then you stop working, or you stop doing what you were doing that made you happy before, that got, I think people are wired differently, but for me, I just want to help people, as many people as I can, in any way that I can, and I'm just trying to find different ways to do that. So,
in this charity, you haven't got your own charity. Are you thinking about starting your own charity?
I did. I really did. I did set one up, which was designed to do exactly what I said earlier about thinking more holistically about all those who serve. So thinking equally about the young female paramedic who, in her first month of, picking dead babies out of cars on the motorway after nasty car wrecks and stuff, would probably see more trauma in her first month of career than, a military guy might see in 20 years. So rather than just assuming that the military goes to war, you and I know that many of those who deploy never go outside a base, let alone see anything unpleasant. So the charity was designed to do that. But it was during COVID, and I kind of struggled to get external investment to buy into it. Everyone said, we love the idea, come back to us when you've already got the money to basically make it a goer. It's like, well, I kind of need you to buy in now, really, in the vision.
It's the whole point.
And unfortunately, I wanted to keep going, and I hate giving up on anything, but I just couldn't afford to keep paying out of my own pocket to keep it going. So it's in suspended animation for now, but I'm hoping one day I can bring it back.
Yeah, there's a guy I had on the podcast, a guy called Nick Goldsmith. Have you come across him? Ex-Royal Marine, PTSD up the yin yang, big time. Got discharged because of it. They said, like, you can't be in the military anymore. You're scrambled. This is his words, not mine. He won't mind me saying this, but he's got a foundation. Well, not a foundation. I think it's Hidden Valley Bushcraft, it's called, and he gets former service members and the blue light service members to come on, and he teaches them bushcraft.
Yeah.
Do you know this guy?
No, I don't know him, but I've heard of the name of what they do.
Yeah, and he was a fascinating guy to talk to. And we're actually thinking about doing one of these out here, out in the Swiss Alps. Which would be great because I could take part. And so he takes them out, gets them back to nature. They sit around the fire. There's no mobile phones, none of that. They tell stories around the fire. They make cabins and do all this cool stuff, and just gets people back to nature for a complete reset. And I think that's something that I could get involved in happily. I think that would be very fulfilling. So there's different ways of doing things, but I think ultimately I'm 100% with you on that, and on giving back as much as you can.
And I just had to work out where I could have the most impact, and I tried for a year and a half to get this charity to a point where it was going to start to fly, but then recognized that for not less effort but for the same effort I could do a lot more good with RBLI, particularly where I'm an ambassador and founding patron of the Tommy Club that they've set up, and they've got some amazing ambassadors. Harry Kane's an ambassador who does great stuff for us, Billy Billingham. There's a bunch of people. It's an amazing charity that has everything from a for-profit business that makes road signs, but they also make all the Tommy, you may have seen the Tommies around the country over the years. You can see it. These.
Oh yeah.
So I'll be like, so if you are a veteran with PTSD and you're trying to just start to get back into the workforce, you may not be able to do a 35-hour week anywhere. So you're going to struggle to do that back in the full real world, as it were. And this charity offers the ability for you to maybe start with 2 hours a week as your first job, just to ease you back in, all the way through to, old people's home, kind of traditional care for elderly veterans and everything in between. They give people skills, and I just love it. It's quite small. It's been going on for even longer than the RBL and combat stress. It started just after the First World War, based in Kent. So, I throw my main effort behind that. But as I mentioned, the other charity I'm supporting with the book is Gurkha Welfare Trust, because Nepal is such a poor place, and they gave me my start in the military, and it's just such an amazing country.
Yeah, I met Krish Thapa not long ago, actually, in Chamonix.
Yeah,
I did a podcast with them not so long ago, and my son, I told my boy that it was early in the morning. I was all changed, ready. I'm out the door, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to meet a monk." And he said, "Can I come?" So I said, "Yeah." So it's not far, it's about just under an hour's drive. So met him. What a great guy! A lovely,
awesome.
lovely fella, and very interesting guy too. So. Before we wrap this up, I need to know how you know Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, I don't know. Well, I know him sort of. So I did a leadership event with him a number of years ago, and in his office in LA, in Los Angeles, and they didn't think he was actually going to be there for the event. It was for a bunch of Hollywood script writers from video games and movies and TV shows, and we were talking about leadership and complexity and telling a few war stories and stuff. And then Arnold turned up, and then when he said who's in today, and then when they said what we were doing, he decided to stay and then sat through the whole thing, and then showed us around his office afterwards, which is a pretty cool thing that has all of the movie props that you would kind of imagine or associate with him. So the Terminator's there, the Predator, the Conan the Barbarian sword, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure it's a tried and tested spiel, but we had a really awesome conversations about leadership, and I'm such a fan of him, really. I mean, he's done some incredible stuff since he left office of governor, and his latest book, that's just come out, which I think is great.
What's his book called? I saw that today, actually. I'm trying to figure out. I couldn't remember the name of it. Something. It's got the number 7 in it.
Be Useful.
Yeah,
is the seven tips or something like that. But he told he was really honest and open about how he viewed leadership and the race to become governor. I won't spoil probably what's in his book, but really thoughtful about what it means to serve and servant leadership, which is something that we don't see clearly very much of or enough of in US or UK these days in politics or in leadership, outside of small niche areas. So I'm a big fan, and I'll hope to do some more stuff with him when the book comes out.
Oh, cool. Are you going to get him to help you out with the marketing?
Watch this space, hopefully.
Oh, nice. That'd be cool. And then,
I mean, if you can get people who are thought of, I mean, particularly him, not me particularly, but people who are seen as strong or, just hardcore men, I guess, being really honest and open and vulnerable and, authentic about the struggles that they have, I think it helps everybody.
Yeah.
If, everyone thinks that you shouldn't talk about this stuff or mental health, then it doesn't help anybody. So the more people that can talk constructively about the tips and techniques that they've found that work for them and point people to the right resources that may be better for some rather than others, then that's all going to be a good outcome.
I've had quite a few people come on and really open up about this sort of stuff. It takes a great deal of courage, because you're basically putting it all out there, and it's, you think, I wonder if I could do that. But I guess, once you're in the situation, it just comes out of you naturally. But Ash, I have to say, mate, I've gone a bit over time, but that's okay. And I really appreciate you coming on. It's great to reconnect with you after all these years, and to see that you're doing so well. And staggering.
Just plug it away.
Biography you got there, mate. It's like, what? This is crazy. Didn't expect it at all.
It's a sales pitch,
Well, yeah, it's a sales pitch, but still, you still got to. If you're walking the walk, you got to talk the talk as well. So, and
I'm sure if I go out ski with you this season, then I'll be feeling pretty inferior, I imagine.
Listen, I'm a very gentle skier nowadays. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But if you do come out, when are you thinking about coming out? Because I'll put it in the diary.
We'll see.
Oh, okay. You're going to text me. All right, bud. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. And all the best for your book. Oh, I meant to say, have you got any websites, social media stuff that you want to put out there?
Well, you can find me on all the socials at Ash Alex Cooper. It's the same on everything.
All one word.
Yeah, Ash Alex Cooper. And for the book itself, it's only available for pre-order with the publisher Unbound. So if you type in Google "Mindful Soldier Unbound," it'll bring up the link.
Nice.
If you're interested, but please don't feel that you have to buy it.
No,
but
I'm going to. I've got a shelf full of books from all the. I'm staggered by how many people are authors. I've got a shelf full of books that they've sent me, and I've got.
Well, if nothing else, then on those long winter nights, you can use it in your wood burner.
Yeah, well, I've got the lady I had on last night. She's written over 40, and I don't know how many she's sending me, but her publicist is sending me a bunch of books. I've got no idea. I think I would just do a giveaway. I'll do a giveaway on the show because it'll be quite nice to people who are listening, and that'd be awesome. But anyway, I really would look forward to seeing you if you came out. So we'll stay in touch. And Ash, thank you very much. I think you're doing fine work for the emergency service and the military guys, and it's a fascinating story you've got there, pal.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for the time, and good luck.
All right, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.